Imagine this: an airline employee responsible for ensuring smooth operations unexpectedly becomes the hijacker of the very flight they're supposed to manage. This unsettling turn of events occurred at FedEx Airlines. This employee attacked the pilots while traveling on this flight and tried to crash the flight. But what happened next? Let's watch the video. On April 7, 1994, Flight number 705 of FedEx Airlines was scheduled to transport electrical equipment to California. On that day, Flight 705 was operated by a DC-10 aircraft with 3 crew members on board. The 49-year-old captain was an experienced Navy pilot who had served in the Vietnam War and had previously worked in the U.S. Navy. Accompanying the captain was a 42-year-old first officer who, like the captain, was also a former Navy pilot and had served in the Vietnam War. Both the captain and the first officer have been working at FedEx Airline for about 20 and 10 years, respectively. Additionally, the flight engineer on duty that day has only 5 years of experience, all of which were gained while working at FedEx. In addition to the active crew members, there was an off-duty flight engineer who was also an employee of the FedEx airline. He traveled in the jump seat, a benefit available to employees of all airlines. If there are no seats left in the aircraft, an extra seat used by the crew can be made available for other authorized personnel. This is why it's called a jump seat. On that day, the off-duty employee was traveling in the jump seat. If we delve into the history of this employee, it reveals that he was a flight engineer at FedEx. However, he deceived the company by falsifying the hours he had flown, thereby inflating his flying experience. He faced an investigation for his actions and was scheduled for disciplinary action. Additionally, he is also traveling in the jump seat inside the cockpit. He also brought a guitar case with him, inside which he kept a variety of hammers. Additionally, a spear gun was stored alongside the hammers in the case. The first thing he did upon boarding the flight was to hide the guitar case containing the hammers and spear gun in a place where it wouldn't be noticed. Following that, the flight engineer removed the circuit breaker of the cockpit voice recorder and set it aside before the rest of the crew members entered the aircraft. After that, he greeted the other crew members who arrived on the flight and engaged in a very casual conversation with them. He also confirmed his position inside the cockpit. Thus, during the departure process for the aircraft takeoff, both the flight engineer on duty and the first officer noticed that the circuit breaker of the cockpit voice recorder had been removed. But they didn't particularly doubt it. Instead, they fixed it, and as a result, the cockpit voice recorder started working again. Thus, the aircraft safely took off. After taking off, the aircraft was flying at an altitude of about 19,000 feet. Throughout this time, the off-duty flight engineer remained seated inside the cockpit. After about 26 minutes, he got up from the cockpit and went to the back of the aircraft. At this point, we can indeed refer to him as a hijacker. Heading back, the hijacker opened his guitar case and retrieved various types of hammers before returning to the cockpit. Upon returning to the cockpit, the hijacker immediately launched an attack on the captain, first officer, and the flight engineer on duty. The sudden and unexpected nature of the attack left all 3 of them terrified. All 3 of them sustained severe head injuries in the attack. The first officer, shaken by the sudden attack, quickly regained his composure and took control of the aircraft. With determination, he promptly initiated a climb, maneuvering the aircraft to a higher altitude. As an ex-Navy pilot, he participated in various aircraft exercises and proved proficiency in all types of maneuvers. With that experience, he possessed a deep understanding of aircraft control and flying techniques. Being a Navy pilot, he exhibited exceptional courage and bravery beyond that of an average individual. The hijacker, along with the captain and the flight engineer, lost their balance and fell backwards from the cockpit as the aircraft rapidly climbed, causing it to lose balance. The aircraft having climbed rapidly, then he executed a sharp left turn. After turning the aircraft too quickly to the left, he began to fly the aircraft upside down. The aircraft inverted, causing the hijacker, captain, and flight engineer to be stuck to the ceiling and unable to move. Meanwhile, the captain and flight engineer were counterattacking against the hijacker. But by this time, the aircraft was losing control. Realizing the danger, the first officer took immediate action to regain control of the aircraft. He leveled off the aircraft, quickly descending to 5,000 feet from an altitude of about 20,000 feet, and regained stable flight. The first officer immediately contacted air traffic control in Memphis to report the attack and requested approval for an emergency landing. He also requested that security personnel and police officers should be on standby to reach the aircraft immediately after landing. Since the aircraft was fully loaded with cargo and fuel, there was a high risk of it overshooting the runway if it landed too soon, making it harder to stop quickly upon landing. Therefore, the first officer requested a longer runway for landing. But by this time, part of his body had started to become paralyzed due to the earlier blow to the head. Therefore, he quickly vacated the seat, allowing the captain to swiftly take control. Then, the captain quickly entered the cockpit. The hijacker was subdued by the flight engineer and the captain, while the first officer was managing all the controls of the aircraft. The captain entered the cockpit and took control of the aircraft. The aircraft landed on runway 36L at its maximum landing weight as designated by the aircraft's specifications. The captain successfully landed the plane safely. The emergency team and police personnel swiftly entered the aircraft through the escape slide and apprehended the hijacker. The remaining crew members were transported to the hospital for medical attention. After attacking and incapacitating the crew members on the aircraft, the hijacker's goal was to cause the aircraft to crash land, aiming to secure a large insurance payout for his family. He later confessed this motive to the investigating officers. The hijacker was later sentenced to 2 life terms without parole. However, due to the severity of the injuries sustained by the crew members in the attack, they were deemed medically unfit to fly commercial planes thereafter. Later in 1994, the government honored these 3 crew members with a gold medal for their heroism. This is what happened to the hijacker who attempted to hijack his own aircraft. However, the crew members were able to escape alive from this ordeal thanks to their courage and exceptional skill in controlling the aircraft.